It's the rainy season, and it is not just humans who love the rainy season. Plants, animals, bacteria, and viruses enjoy it just as much. In fact, this season is the perfect season for cold, viral infections, allergies to flourish and prosper. So for you to stay safe and enjoy the season to the fullest, we'll be speaking with a public health practitioner, Dr. Folajimi Ogundele. Thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you, Perpetua.
All right, talk to us about the peculiarity of the season. It is believed that there are some illnesses that are peculiar or have higher possibility of occurring during this period. What are these illnesses? Let's talk about these illnesses. How are they contracted? I believe that's the first step to knowing how to avoid them.
Well, we all love the season. People are happy that the heat and the hot sun sort of goes down during this period. And we're all happy to have the rains. The farmers are happy to have the rain. The city dwellers, to an extent, are happy to have the rain, especially if it doesn't interrupt daily commute from home and work. But there are some issues when it comes to health where the rain becomes, a curse rather than a blessing. We all know that there's a possibility that there will be more flooding during, and also at the same time, there's a tendency, especially for areas that are prone to dirt, to have more diseases. For example, this is the time when you have more severe cases of malaria. You have more children with cerebral malaria because now there's more rain, there's more stagnant water, more breeding grounds for mosquitoes. And all these things become a big problem as time goes by. It is so much so predictable that the Nigerian Malaria Elimination early this month started the seasonal malaria chemotherapy, where they give anti-malaria drugs to sort of prevent a lot of children from coming down with malaria. Another problem is actually what we call fecal-oral diseases, or diseases that has to do with the digestive tract. Because of this period, there's a tendency that issues like cholera, issues like dysentery, diarrhea, gastrointestinal diseases become more prevalent. And the primary basic underlying problem is that we do not have standard hygiene. We are in a community, we are in a country where people prefer to be creative rather than be preventive on health issues. We have a lot of dirty environment, we have a lot of dirty practices in the community, and it becomes a bigger problem during the humid season where everything is wet, and transmission is actually higher during this period. A third group of issues we have is people tend to have more cold and more flu in this season, especially those who are prone to allergies. So these are basically the issues around this health challenges. But the underlying problem that we have is that the environment, the living conditions around people, the practice of the people do not support preventive measures. And that's why I'm happy to have this discussion with you, to discuss the preventive measures people take to be able to prevent these diseases. And the first thing about this preventive measure is actually hygiene and cleanliness in the home environment, in the way we live our lives. People need the information to be able to do so. And not just the information, the enlightenment, know that when I do things this way, I get better results than the way I used to do them before. And it is better I prevent diseases rather than me treat for myself for illness from these diseases. So that basically summarizes it.
Well, you've mentioned quite a number of things. Help us understand cerebral malaria, and then for fecal-oral and gastrointestinal diseases, help us with how they are contracted and how we can prevent them.
Now, so we have malaria, and then we have severe malaria as a group. Now, severe malaria over the years has been malaria comes to when a child has malaria, and there are quite prominent complications of it. Now, a large group or a large subset of severe malaria is cerebral malaria. And that's when the child presents with malaria and at the same time has neurological symptoms like disorientation, like coma, like seizures, that give inclination that, oh, the nervous system of this child has been affected by the malaria. And it's really quite severe because a high number of children that have cerebral malaria will die. And the higher the infection of malaria that occurs during a season, the higher the category of children in severe malaria, the higher the chances of children having, more children having cerebral malaria. And it's primarily because of what I said earlier. Now that there's rainy season, a lot of puddles that were dry before now have water. And you have stagnant water around. And the first thing that you find in stagnant water is the larvae of the mosquito. So there's a high tendency there will be more mosquitoes in the community, more mosquito bites, more malaria infection, and all the rest. So that's really where the trend works from. In the area of gastrointestinal tract, several factors from the humidity of the environment actually makes it more favorable for bacteria, coupled with the fact that people do not have standard hygiene practice as a norm in their homes, in their workplace. I don't want to say thank God for COVID, but hand washing became a major thing because of COVID. And the hand has been a very big culprit in the transmission of organisms from the surfaces of foods from somewhere around to people's food, and people eat this food and there's severe diarrhea, and the cycle continues. And cholera, that is this, basically even diarrhea, or sometimes what we call food poisoning, typhoid disease, are all food and waterborne diseases. So during this rainy season, food and waterborne diseases have a high incidence of occurrence than during the dry season. And it's primarily because of the way we handle food.
Well, talking about food handling, I think you've really emphasized that particular point. Now, what measures should we put in place when handling food so this food, at the end of the day, doesn't get contaminated?
This is the time that people need to actually put some preventive measures in their water system. Those that use well, this is the best time for you to actually put chlorine in that well and chlorinate your well. The use of chlorine simply can kill a lot of bacteria, including salmonella, which causes typhoid. And apart from making sure that your water system is actually, safe, and also making sure that you actually wash your hands, the third thing is that our food preservative measures need to be top-notch. Now, we know we have issues with power supply. It's easy for food to get rotten in the fridge and freezers. So we need to find alternative ways to actually preserve our food, especially when you have a poor power supply. And I believe there are several ways. The refrigeration is not the only way by which you can preserve our food. The other ways you can preserve it, the use of microwave too is something I have a problem with, because when you want to warm your meal, it's expected that when you warm your meal, it will kill off the bacteria. However, when the food is not properly microwaved, because of the inequality in the distribution of heat, you can have a meal being hot on the outside and yet being cold or lukewarm in the inside. And that will actually, allow bacteria to flourish. And you feel that you warmed your meal before eating, you really didn't warm it properly. So those are measures we can take as individuals. Then when it goes on a larger scale, who is monitoring caterers? Who is monitoring food vendors? How are they sure that they do not hire people who are typhoid carriers in their midst? How are they sure that when the food handlers are actually preparing this food for us, they are taking utmost precaution to make sure that they do not, contaminate their food? How are we sure that the ice creams are taken as safe, especially when you have poor power supply? Refrigeration becomes a big problem. And that's why I think Nigeria is actually at a bigger risk of gastrointestinal disease. So these are the issues we have in the community. So the government policy has to come in much more. The food health inspectors have to come in much more to actually make sure that, look, we are actually doing our job and food is safe for people in the community. It's unfortunately so bad right now that having bouts of diarrhea after going out to eat at a party seems like a norm for a lot of people, and they're already using medication that, oh, let's get this drug to stop the stool, or let's get that drug to stop the stomach ache. That they feel is the level of prevention. It should not be so. Our level of prevention should be before the illness or before the symptoms arrive. And this season of rainy season is where we have this problem much more.